Let me introduce you to one of the proud supporters of From the Hawkeye of the Storm, Iowa floor covering down in Bondurant. Now, for the last year and a half, you've heard me talk about this great company in the heart of central Iowa. They've got their tough core, click together, 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring, great for you DIYers out there. But even if you're just a contractor or you need a different type of flooring, they've got you covered, whether it be tile showers, carpet. Give Iowa Floor Covering a chance to serve you better and serve your flooring needs. Visit them online at iowafloorcovering.com. That's iowafloorcovering.com, or you can give them a call at 515-379-7000. That's 515-379-7000. Thank you to Iowa Floor Covering in Bondurant. We appreciate Iowa Floor Covering for being a proud sponsor of our post-game coverage here From the Hawkeye of the Storm throughout Iowa women's basketball season. And as we head into March Madness, it's always a fun time, regardless of what the other team in the state of Iowa that people, at least in Hawkeye Nation, that people care about is doing. I know they're questionable to make it to postseason play, but these Iowa women are they have rounded into prime form to potentially make a run, not only in this conference tournament, but in the big dance. I'm joined by a good friend of ours here at the show, Kyle Spence of Kyle Spence Golf. Kyle, it's good to be with you and good to have you here. We do not have Kasheen with us this evening. We may get an appearance from her on the phone line potentially, but I think she's comfortable with me sharing with everybody. She's very invested in her volleyball leagues. People are probably aware of that. And Kasheen, I was told won tonight, so congratulations to her volleyball team. But we hope to get her back tomorrow. This was a game that was not close from the start, Kyle. And by the way, we are going to be joined by the other Kyle And at some point, we're going to have to get you two together. And instead of Mike and Mike in the morning, it's Kyle and Kyle in the evening, because that would be a for me just to get out of here. But anyways, we'll leave that for another day. This game was not close from the get-go. It was 9-6, and the Hawkeyes finished off the first half on a 19-0 run. And, I mean, if you shoot the ball as well as Iowa shot tonight, you're plus 22 on the glass. You make 11 threes. You know, first of all, a recipe for success in the postseason, because you're able to get your starters out of there and get them some rest, which was huge because they're going to be back on the court tomorrow against a very well-rested Spartan bunch. But there was any fear that Iowa wouldn't be able to duplicate what they did on Sunday against this very Wisconsin team, those fears were quickly vanished. What a first half, what a performance from this entire team as it relates to efficiency. One player in double figures, Kyle, and that was Lucy Olson with 19. I don't think I've ever seen a stat line like this. I mean, it's one thing to have one player in double figures, you lose, you score 40. You know, maybe the old Tony Bennett teams did that at times. Maybe the old Little Lick teams did that at times. No offense, John Licklider. But this is an Iowa team that scored 81 in a Big Ten tournament game and had one player in double figures. Just your 2 cents on that, because I think that's obviously a good sign, and I think maybe an historic stat line there.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say, you know, I've come on here the last couple of weeks and maybe been a little bit down at times talking about the men's team, but I have to say, number one, the job that Jan Jensen has done in turning this team what it was at the 5-game losing streak to start the Big Ten season, towards the beginning of Big Ten play, to what they look like right now. What an incredible turnaround. Every single player tonight looked bought in. And one of the things we talked about on the post-game show after the Illinois game, when I hosted the men's post-game, was they didn't look like they knew what shots they were looking for on any particular possession. The men didn't. It was disjointed. It was out of sync. It was out of whack. There was no, they came down the court and they had no idea what they were looking for. And it couldn't have been more opposite with the women tonight. I mean, every single time they came down the court, they were coordinated. They knew where their teammates were. They knew what shot the play was looking for. They knew the reads. They knew the primary read, the secondary read. And it was like, okay, primary read's there, go for it. Primary read's not there, secondary read. It was very crisp. It was very coordinated. It was very well coached. And it really looked like a team that is cohesive, that has chemistry, that has built camaraderie with each other. And I still think, you know, when they get punched in the mouth, it'll still be that question of leadership that we've talked about all year. But man, offensively, defensively, they look extremely well coached. They look extremely cohesive as a unit, and they're sharing the basketball at a really, really high level. The offense is tremendously balanced and tremendously coordinated. It really looks great.
We call you our stats guy here. I call on you for stats every month or two. But I want you to do me a favor, Kyle, because we're going to add in Kyle Huseman, HawkeyeReport.com. There, a few games ago, we looked up, I believe this was Sydney Falter, her numbers from three during a stretch of time. And I know we did the same with Lucy Olson, but I got to see what Sydney Falter's percentages are, because now, I mean, the sample size is so big here since at least the beginning of February. And if you look at, I mean, I'm just pulling up her game log here. I'm not going to share my screen at the moment because I don't want to take away from the macro picture here. And of course, the guy was got a game tomorrow. So we're not going to, it's probably not going to be a real long post-game show tonight without Kashin. We're going to be right back here tomorrow night. So if you want to get into the conversation here, give us a call now. The number's up on the screen. 515. Actually, it's not up on the screen. I'll throw it up there. 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. But back to Sydney Falter just for a second. I mean, we remember her coming off injury. She really struggled shooting the ball. In fact, she had up into, let's see, the end of January. Their last game in January was against Northwestern. To that point, Sydney Falter had one game where she made more than one three-pointer, and that was against Iowa State in December when she made 3 of 6. Since then, she has had, well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, 7 games, if I'm counting correctly, where she's had more than one three-point. I mean, it's been I don't want to say feast or famine because it's not a good way to describe that, but it's been going from totally cold to totally hot from three. Her numbers, her efficiency from outside is off the charts. So, Kyle, I'm curious if you pull up the numbers, not just since the Northwestern game specifically, but that might be the good place to start because that's what, honestly, since the Oregon game, if you could do me a favor and figure out these 3-point makes since the Oregon game, because she was 1 of 1 against Oregon, 1 of 1 Washington, 3 of 4 Northwestern, 1 of 3 USC, 3 of 5 Minnesota, 3 of 3 Nebraska, 2 of 5 Rutgers, 1 of 3 Ohio State, 0 of 1 UCLA, 4 of 4 at Michigan, 2 of 3 Wisconsin, and then today she goes 1 of 1. Those are ridiculous 3-point numbers. Now she doesn't.
She is since that Northwestern game, she's 20 of 32.
20 of 32. That's insane.
That's absolutely absurd. And I had one stat from tonight as well on that note that I had circled at the top of my little document sheet here. The starters tonight as a unit shot 70% from the field. The starters tonight shot 23 of 33, and not a single one of them had more than 2 turnovers. I mean, that is just remarkable efficiency. Just remarkable efficiency.
Yeah, so 20 of 32. I mean, I'm just for people, I'm going to put this up on the screen because I really don't think we're overstating how ridiculous that is. 20 of 32 from 3 since January 28th. So incredible stuff. We're going to welcome in our good friend Kyle Huesman, HawkeyeReport.com now. Kyle, appreciate you being here, and you observed what we observed. I spelled Sydney's name wrong, so I'll make a correction there. But you observed what we observed today, and you heard the first couple of minutes of our conversation. Again, as I let off, it's going to be hard to beat this team. You make 10-plus threes. If you're dominant on the glass, now it helps that you shoot the ball well. If you don't, part of that's Iowa's defense against a pretty good Wisconsin team on the offensive end. Kyle, you talked about that on Sunday. This is a Wisconsin team that throughout the year could score. That's not where their problems were. Their problems were on the defensive end, and Iowa held them to 54 tonight.
Yeah, and I didn't talk about it specifically on the show on Sunday, but I put it in. I talked on a podcast about it and put it in my game preview that I felt like there was a chance that this game was going to go more smoothly for Iowa. Just because you look at what Iowa did in the second half of that game on Sunday, they really took control of it. Made some adjustments on the defensive end, outscored them, 45-30 in the second half of that game, and limited Wisconsin to right around 30% shooting. I felt like coming into this game, there were adjustments that Iowa did make and could make to potentially improve their chances of winning by a larger margin. Whereas we talked about what I said on Sunday, Wisconsin played pretty well and still lost by 15 points. So it was a matter for Wisconsin. It was like, where can you squeeze out maybe a little bit more production from a game where we feel like we played well, whereas Iowa felt like they could make some adjustments in certain areas. Like an Iowa can make adjustments on the defensive end because they are a good defensive team. Wisconsin's stuck where they are after 30 games. They're just not a good defensive team. So it was going to take something pretty impressive from Wisconsin on the offensive end tonight to stay in it. And I thought Iowa did a great job on the defensive end. I mean, Sarah Williams finished with 22 points. She had a really good night, shot 9 of 16. But everyone else was held in check. There's a lot of 2 for 5, a 2 for 8, a 2 for 10, a 1 for 4. They had no one else going consistently outside of Sarah Williams. Meanwhile, it seemed like everybody that was shooting the ball for Iowa was knocking down a shot, especially in the first half. To have 5 different people knock down a 3-pointer, that's pretty impressive.
It is impressive. And, I mean, you heard me bring up just the fact that there was one player in double figures. I don't know that I've ever seen a stat line like that, let alone in a dominant win where you score 80-plus, Kyle. I mean, I was literally looking at the box score at the end of the game thinking, how'd they get to 81? But, I mean, we see the comments on depth, and they weren't great once Edgar and Gyamfi and Levine were in there. But it's so huge that they were able to get the starters out and give Lucy rest and give Hannah rest. But, man, the efficiency and the balance, we haven't seen anything like this all year.
And honestly, I thought, usually when you put in, I mean, because the starters played sporadically there in the fourth quarter for a few minutes just to give those bench players a rest. But, I mean, the lead never really dipped. I mean, it actually grew a bit after, in the fourth quarter. I think it got down to like 18 at one point, and then they ended up winning by 27. So I thought the bench players did a good enough job not letting it become like a more respectable looking score for Wisconsin. But yeah, I mean, the fact, I think they probably pulled, the starters played less minutes than if this was the middle of the season. You probably would have played them into the fourth quarter. But given the fact that they could be playing several games here in several days, you were going to pull them a little bit earlier if you felt like you could do it. But I look more at like the first half box score, because that's when the starters were playing more minutes. I mean, Lucy Olson goes for 14. But it was just really spread out on who was adding to the total. I mean, Sida Fulcher had 9.6 rebounds in the first half. Sid was really good in the first half, I thought, and then they just didn't need her in the second half. I don't even know how many minutes she played in the second half. But Taylor McCabe ends up making 3 threes. I thought Aaliyah Guyton had a really, really solid game, and I had a couple of turnovers where I felt like she forced things a little bit. But overall, I mean, hit a couple of threes, ended up with 6 assists, I believe. 6 assists to no, I'm looking at Kylie Feuerbach, who I was going to mention as well. Aaliyah Guyton had 5 assists, 4 turnovers. So a couple more turnovers that she'd probably like, but I thought Aaliyah looked a little bit more comfortable tonight. As I said, hit a couple of shots, and then I thought Kylie Feuerbach had a really good game. Someone who we've talked about a lot defensively lately, but I've also thrown in at times, she just needs to be a threat on the offensive end. And that's what she was tonight. 9 points, makes a 3-pointer, had 6 assists to 1 turnover. So I thought that was the thing, in a game where Iowa wins by 27. What stood out to me was the Kylie Feuerbach and the Aaliyah Guyton contributions tonight. To see them, we've seen, the Sida Fulchers and the Lucy Olsons, and Hannah at times has been really good, and Taylor McCabe at times has shot the ball really well. But to see that depth go even further tonight, and see Kylie Feuerbach have that type of night on the offensive end, and see Aaliyah Guyton look a little bit more comfortable, and even Ava Hayden come in and give some good minutes in the time that she played. That was a really good sign, and hopefully something that they can keep going as they go on tomorrow, and if they play Friday and then into the NCAA tournament. Because when you're going to play that many games in a row, and then obviously in tournament time, you need that type of depth, and you need those players to step up and contribute.
Let's make a correction here, because it was not a correction. The stat wasn't wrong from our statistician here in the middle. By the way, he's used to counting down in golf, so we'll give him a break in that. But as it relates to Sydney Falter, she's actually 22 of 34 since the 19th of January, because she was perfect the 2 games prior. So we brought up Northwestern, but if you go back to the game against Oregon, 22 of 34, good for 65% free. Now, there was a period of time, Kyle H., where Aaliyah Guyton was shooting a really high percentage, but it didn't last over this type of a span. Ironically enough, both these players were coming off injury. My theory, as I've stated before, is, again, Aaliyah's coming off a serious knee injury. But you wonder, maybe shot making is something, 3-point shooting is something you're able to do before you get to full speed. Although Sydney Falter there was a period in there when she came off injury. She was not shooting the 3-ball well, but this is going totally cold to totally hot. Kyle Huseman, how do you explain how well she's shooting the ball from outside right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it, and I said this, I kind of compared her 3-point shooting like a Taylor McCabe or a Gabby Marshall, where they're more of just spot up 3-point shooters. They don't really create their own looks. Now Sida Fulcher's 3 tonight I didn't know she had that step back contested 3 in her. I didn't know that was something that she had in her bag. But for the most part, Sida Fulcher's going to be that spot up shooter. So is Taylor McCabe, and so was Gabby Marshall. And when you're a spot up shooter, most of the time you're open when you shoot those. So if you're open and you're getting those looks, compared to like a Caitlin Clark, who would try and successfully do those step back 3s and things like that. Sida Fulcher isn't someone that's going to do that. And, Taylor McCabe's not someone that's going to do that. So when you're spotting up and getting those open 3s, you generally, if you're a good shooter, are going to shoot a higher percentage on those. Now, 65% over however many games that is. That's pretty impressive. That's higher than you would expect on generally open 3-pointers. But I think that is part of it. When a Sida Fulcher's going really well from 3, or a Taylor McCabe, or like we saw with a Gabby Marshall, it's because they're spot up shooters. So generally they're getting those kickouts, they're getting those transition 3s, where more often than not they're pretty open. And if you're a good shooter, you can knock those down at a pretty high level. But to have someone like Sida Fulcher right now, who can be relied on to be a really high level shooter right now, shooting it better than Taylor McCabe is, to have that when you know what Taylor McCabe is capable of, and when you add in what Lucy Olson has been doing from the 3-point line over the second half of the season. But then you go even further and you say, okay, Kylie Feuerbach, someone that we feel like can, not every night, but can hit the 3-ball. And if Aaliyah Guyton can get there as well, like she did tonight, 2 of 2 from 3, that's kind of the team that we talked about early in the year, where yeah, the 3-point shooting is there. Can it be consistent enough? And right now it feels like they're getting closer to that level where they do have some pretty consistent 3-point shooting.
Let's go to our phone line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Oh, yes, this is Jacob. How you doing?
Doing good, Jacob. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Just to pick up on what you were saying about Sydney earlier is it's so nice to see her back playing basketball, because what I always hear these days is about who's the most skilled player and all that other garbage. Yeah, I don't care about any of that, because usually when people say that, they're just trying to smuggle in LeBron James. I like players who play basketball. And what Sydney does is she simply plays basketball. She doesn't make mistakes. She knows how to track the ball in the air. She knows the feel around the basket. She knows how to rebound, while at the same time not having maybe the most athletic abilities. She, can't jump very high, but she knows how to play basketball. And the other thing is, was the ball hot tonight? Did somebody put something on the ball? Because when everybody was getting it, they were putting it up, not with no hesitation. It was once they got it, boom, up.
Well, can I just say, here's a theory, and I'm not normally this type of a rah type of guy that buys into stuff, but they did have Caitlin Clark right there. And it was Caitlin Clark's. No, I'm just saying, listen, Kyle, if there was any pregame pep talk from Caitlin, it probably was let it fly. I don't know.
Probably.
I'd say.
I can see you doing that.
Jacob, when you say, well, they were just letting it fly and shooting, that's what Caitlin did. So
can I say this too? Like, on that note too, this is kind of what I was getting at the beginning of the show. Like, when a team knows their reads and are quick and concise and crisp with getting the ball to the right read, the ball goes up, right? Like, if you're looking for a post touch for Addison O'Grady, the ball's going up quick if the post touch is available, right? If the play is a driving kick to find Taylor McCabe in the corner, the ball's going up, right? That the ball going up is a sign that you're executing your offense properly, right?
Yeah. And by the way, Roger, thank you for bringing this up. You had Lisa Bluter sitting courtside drinking a beer, so maybe that made a difference, Jacob.
Yeah.
That's actually what I was going to say is my favorite thing of the whole night. My favorite thing is Lisa Bluter kicked back, legs up, kicked back, nice long drink of what appears to be an ice cold Bud Light. That was great. That was great to see.
Jacob, I appreciate you calling in, and I'm just glad you didn't bring up what some people in the chat have brought up. Jordan says, got to get the obligatory Mavericks pain out of the way. They lost by like 40 tonight to the Bucks. The whole season's done. Every time we come on here, there's worse news to talk about. I know Amanda says she thought of me when the Kyrie news came out. So that's all I'm saying on it. Jacob, have a good night. Thank you for calling in and not bringing up my Mavs.
Well, here's the deal.
Go ahead.
I do like to troll.
I know
because
you do.
I do, and it's fun. But at some point,
compassion.
When it rains, it pours.
Compassion.
It rains, it pours. This is a horrific injury to be honest, a franchise that right now is a complete dumpster fire.
Yep.
It is the armpit. It's the Sacramento Kings and Los Angeles Clippers of the 80s.
Yep.
That is what is going to be happening to the Mavericks over the next few years. Everybody's going to get fired. But that's a separate issue. I didn't want to bring that up because,
Yep.
it's a bad injury. But I'm glad I was playing fast.
I was playing great, Jacob. Yep. That's what counts. So thank you for calling in, sir. We'll plan on talking to you after a win tomorrow night.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Brian, appreciate the super chat. This team has really grown together beautifully. Couldn't agree more. Kyle S. talked about the coaching. We've discussed it on this show, but who won Coach of the Year? That's come out, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't Jan. She should be in the running. I mean, she should be in the running. There's no way she shouldn't have been. I wonder where she finished as far as voting is concerned. But all the awards came out, right, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm looking it up. Right. I'm looking it up right now.
I'm just going to start calling you guys Spence and Houston because I can't do this whole identifying between the two. Umansky, thank you for the super chat. Cash drinking a Bluter Bud, celebrating a volleyball win and a Hawkeye win. Thank you for that, Lomansky. Hope to hear from you this evening. S. Steele, I don't know if this is Sage Steele or someone else, but S. Steele says Hayden can develop into a more athletic Sonano. Interesting. I like it. I'm curious, Huseman, I'll ask you this question. Do you see more Sonano or Gustafson in Ava Hayden's game? Or neither?
I would say neither, because she's more athletic than both of them. So I don't know. I mean, just the general principles of post play, I think will eventually get there with Ava, where it'll be, the general principles of post play will be similar to Megan or Monica. In terms of like finishing around the basket, I think Ava will get there where she can be pretty consistent around the rim. Addie O'Grady in her own right has really gotten there in terms of finishing around the basket. So I think Ava will get there in terms of that, but I don't know, I think Ava is going to be able to have the potential to do more things, kind of like what Addie does right now with the mid-range jumpers. But I think Ava will be able to do that and then also drive to the basket off of that, or run in transition, which I know Monica and Megan could do. But I don't really get that type of comparison, because I do think Ava's, with her athleticism, is just such a different player. Whereas Monica and Megan were generally more around the basket. So yeah, I don't get that type of comparison, but I think the general principles with the Jan and now Randy Henderson and still, I think will be there with Ava as she continues to go.
If she can develop that level of if she can develop that level of footwork, she'll be scary. She'll be really scary as an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but you see the potential there and why she was so highly regarded, and it'll be interesting to see how the two bigs, with Layla Hayes coming in next year, how they complement one another, because with Addison gone and with Edgar, not that Edgar's eating up any minutes as it is, but if Hannah can develop the shot, we keep saying that, if she develops the shot and then that leaves minutes at the 5 without O'Grady, you may see a freshman play next year in Hayes, and that'll be an interesting tandem to see how those two work off one another. And the battles there, because they're both highly regarded prospects, and we've seen Ava in Big Ten action proving it, in spite of having to wait her turn. So kudos to her. Rhonda, thank you for reminding everybody to hit the like button. It does help a lot. Kelly, same thing. And she says, share the link on your social media. So definitely do that. And Amanda, thank you as well. Click the like button if your favorite player got time tonight. And we could just say your favorite player scored, because everybody scored. Right. So they, what a night from an offensive efficiency and balance standpoint. Bass Fuser says, why don't we talk about some golf? Well, Kyle, I'm sorry, but this is not a golf night. We have 700 people here looking forward to Iowa, Michigan State. But I noticed you had did you have a blister on your hand? I noticed you've been swinging in your apartment, haven't you?
Yeah, we have not going to disclose where it is, but I have a setup I've been going to practice, and I'm hitting about 300 balls a day. So I've got blisters all over my hands.
Good stuff. It's going to be 70 on Monday. At least
I know. I am booking it outdoors early next week. Booking it outdoors.
Lomansky, we appreciate this super chat as well. An honor to my fave, Miss Guyton, giving 100%. And one of Miss Guyton's big fans out there in Hawkeye Nation. We've got the other Cory here. So we got 2 Corys and 2 Kyles. Cory, welcome to the show, sir. Good to have you.
I was really disappointed when you opened up with the image of you and Kyle, when I expected you and Kashin. I think it would have been appropriate for you to put a warning up before you guys came live.
You should pay more attention to the thumbnails, because the thumbnails do not lie. Although they did lie a few days ago when the thumbnail said with Cory Brada and it was Kyle Spence. But anyways,
what a joy to watch. And I'll just say 3 or 4 quick things here and get out of your hair. But Caitlin Clark energy was in the building. And you say what you want, but when she's in the building, the confidence level on this team is through the roof. That's my theory, but I'm sticking to it. Secondly,
it was the Clark effect or the Lisa Bluter effect, because I'm seeing both in the chat.
now
Double.
the Bluter effect was supposed to be, in my mind, when I was tuning into this, I expected 3 windows. You, Lisa Bluter in the center, and Cash
Well, Lisa
on the right.
was kicking back with some beers, so she's probably
Well, and in my mind, I envisioned 3 Bud Lights being drank in tandem in a cheers and a toast. Anyway, I want to ask Kyle. He's probably Huseman. Was this defense not at a whole nother level tonight?
I mean, I don't know that I would say at a whole nother level. I think they played better, and I kind of touched on this a little bit ago. I think that they made some adjustments to how they were defending in the post because Jan did not like the way that they defended the post in the first half against Wisconsin on Sunday. I think those two, McCray and Williams, had combined for like 17 and 10 in the first half, combined for 35 and 20 for the game. So I think that was a big thing coming in, with just defending the post differently. I thought Wisconsin missed some shots tonight, but I mean, defense has been something that Iowa's done all season pretty well. And you see it sometimes. Tonight was one where the defense maybe showed up a little bit more. Obviously destroyed them on the glass. I mean, 41-19 is impressive. I don't know that I'd say the defense was a level above. I guess we'll see tomorrow when they play another high level team. I mean, Wisconsin obviously towards the bottom of the conference, but I just think the thing that they can rely on defense a little bit more this year has been huge, because we've talked about how the offense has not quite been there at times, but now that the offense is kind of clicking more on all cylinders, tonight it was clicking on all cylinders. When the team can defend at a high level, and you have someone like a Kylie Fierbach or a Sita Fulter who's a good defender, and all the defense that they've shown, that's when this is a really dangerous team, when the offense starts clicking with the defense that they've had for the majority of the year.
Yeah, one concern, if there was one negative, which I don't want to be negative, but a little bit of concern there in the post with Addie and Hannah was pretty effective, but Addie and those blocks. Wasn't she a lot more effective in the previous matchup against Wisconsin? I'm trying to recall.
No, Addie did not. Addie did not play well in either. But I mean, Sarah Williams is a tough matchup for someone like Addie, because Sarah Williams is one of the more athletic centers in the Big Ten, and Sarah Williams is an all defensive team. Just got selected to the all defensive teams up there and blocked shots. But yeah, Addie did not fare well against Sarah Williams.
Addie was 4 of 4 the other night, though.
Was she actually?
Remember we talked about how great all the bigs were against
Wisconsin? Yeah, she finished with 10 points. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not concerned about it, because I thought Ava Hayden came in there and gave him good minutes, and, we did not see the dominant rebounding performance out of Hannah Stolke tonight, but the team was so dominant on the glass. And it's good when you're forcing your opponent to shoot 38% or whatever it was, so. But I understand you're trying to look for something to. Believe me, the coaches, I would think, none of us here are coaches, but I would have to think that on a short turnaround, a one-day turnaround here, you probably like not having a whole lot of stuff you got to go back and look at tape on, because you just simply don't have time. So
I don't even know how much they would, even if this was a close game. I mean, you would be more like, you don't have time to, because they played Michigan State so long ago. You probably got to. I mean, I'm sure they've done some pre-scouting that it'd be very dumb to come into the Big Ten tournament and not have pre-scouted Michigan State again. But there's just such little turnaround time, and given the fact that you played Michigan State so long ago, if there is anything that Jan Jensen didn't like, I think that may have been a post game. Hey, we need to do this better, whatever. I don't know that I don't even know if they will touch on it tomorrow, if there was anything that stood out, just because really there's no reason to. You won by 27. You got to get into the game plan for Michigan State. But yeah, I mean, I don't. It's hard in a game like this when you play the bench players for so long. Some of the the stats, the rebounding was so skewed, but I mean, Iowa didn't miss a lot of shots, so it's hard for Wisconsin to rebound when Iowa doesn't really miss many shots. And so some of the stats were a little skewed, but I don't know. There was a lot to me that stood out.
Well, they only gave up. We'll say this: they only gave up 5 offensive rebounds all game, and I'm talking about Wisconsin. So Iowa had 11 offensive rebounds to Wisconsin's 5. So yeah, you're right. I understand where you're coming from on the plus 22 is more of an indication of the defense and the lack of shooting from Wisconsin, but they also held them off the glass to not allow those second chance opportunities to a couple of solid bigs for Wisconsin that caused Iowa some challenges on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I come away seeing is the fact that they were able to make some adjustments and you saw it in the second half on Sunday. I mean, not necessarily with the bigs, but you saw better defense in the second half. And then you saw those adjustments take even more effect today to see them go out. And I mean, like I said, Sarah Williams had a really good night, but she was going to have a decent night whether you won or not. So holding Carter McRae though to 6 points and 2 rebounds was the big one because then they only combined for 28 and 7. That's a very big difference from 35 and 20 the other day. So I thought that was one of the bigger things was just seeing them improve on the post defense because any improvement on the 35 and 20 I think is what they needed to have a good game, and anything you could take off of that was going to make Wisconsin have to shoot really, really well from 3-point range. And 28 and 7 from those two, it was going to be impossible to win with those numbers. So that was the thing that stood out to me was that they were able to make some adjustments on how they defended the post players, and then it clearly had an effect tonight.
At what point? When do you?
Yeah, I think I was losing connection here, but I just wanted to comment and kind of echo what Lemansky said. Guyton, if we get Guyton rolling, she was the one that when everything went cold from 3, she would light it up and get us through some tough stretches and games. And I feel like that's going to be key. And lastly, I guess, so what's the focus moving forward? What's the concerns with Michigan State? Who do we have to worry about here?
Thanks for the call, Cory. And his connection's kind of struggling. But one thing, and Kyle, you'll be able to. I know you covered this sport inside and out, and you remember that loss against Michigan State. I will say this, without even looking back, I'm pretty sure they had a real problem with turnovers in that game. They were having issues with turnovers in every game back then. They've cleaned a lot of that up, but they did turn the ball over 15 times tonight. So I still think the emphasis is going to remain throughout this month protecting the ball, because that could easily rear its ugly head and cause Iowa to lose a game and be out of postseason contention. I think protecting the ball, especially against pressing teams, is going to be a continued point of emphasis.
I didn't think, the turnovers were one thing that is one of the stats I would point to that was kind of skewed. They had 6 turnovers in the fourth quarter, so they had 9 in the first 3 quarters, which would be, you play your starters the full game, that'd be on track to have 12 turnovers, which would have been fine. So I thought a couple extra turnovers there in the fourth quarter when you're playing, some people that haven't played, some freshmen that are playing in their first ever Big Ten tournament and they're playing extended minutes, and then you're putting in some players that haven't played a lot this year. So that I thought they did fine when they needed to, in the first half, at least what they have in the first half. They had 6 turnovers in the first half, so I wasn't really worried about that there. But yeah, Michigan State is one of the best teams in the country at forcing turnovers. That's just kind of the thing that they do, and that was something that certainly came up in that loss earlier in the season. I'm trying to pull up the box score. I do remember a significant amount of that game, but I don't know exact stuff here.
Real quick, I just think it's hilarious, and people in the chat, whenever Kyle Spence, go back to you on this. I think it's hilarious when people in the chat, if I say one thing about the Mavs, or I say something about tennis last night, or I talk about Oreo cookies, stick to the Hawks. You need to talk about the Hawks. It's like, calm down. You know how many hours we spend on this show talking about Iowa? Anyways, I just Kyle Houston, you got that stat line? You got that box score?
Yeah, I do. So Michigan State forced 23 turnovers. They only turned that into 14 points, which was Iowa probably lucked out there that Michigan State only did that. But still, in that close of a game to lose by 2, And the turnovers were 23-14. That's 9 extra possessions that Michigan State got. Iowa did get 2 extra offensive rebounds. But the thing that I look at when I look at the box score from, what is this? This was December 15th. So, I mean, forever ago, quite literally. I mean, that was their first game in Big Ten play. So what I kind of look at is I say, who played well, who didn't play well for either team, and how are those players playing now? For Michigan State, Taryn Halleck has been playing really well lately. Big Ten plays averaging 13, 14 points a game. She was just 2 of 11 in that game with 8 points. So you look at, that could be a player that maybe Iowa needs to look out for a little bit more. In a loss, she didn't play well for them. Obviously, Julia Arald is going to be a key player to know, and Grace Van Sluten as well. Grace had 14 and 7. Arald had 19 and 4. Had a couple of made threes. But on the Iowa side, I mean, this is at a time where Iowa was still. This was right after the Iowa State game. They lost to Tennessee the game before, so it was kind of that area before the losing streak where Iowa was kind of inconsistent a little bit. They'd play well one game, the next game they wouldn't. Hannah was 4 of 10 from the floor, had 18 points, 8 rebounds. But this was Lucy Olson, one of her worst games of the season. I mean, 4 of 17 from the floor, 13 points, had 7 turnovers, which is, I would assume, is a season high or ties it. Kylie Fierbach had 5 turnovers. Sita Fulter was 1 of 6 from the floor, 0 of 3 from 3, only had 4 points. So when I look at the box score for Iowa's side, the turnovers are still going to be a big thing because that's just what Michigan State does. They're going to force some turnovers. Iowa's probably not going to get out of that game tomorrow with 10, 12 turnovers. That's just not how it's going to be. But you look at some of those players that struggled in that game, a Sita Fulter, a Lucy Olson, and even like a Kylie Fierbach who had 5 turnovers in that game. All 3 of those players are playing way better than they were at that point in the season. So as long as Iowa continues to play at their level, I think this game can certainly be different than the one that happened in East Lansing. What is that, like 2 months ago? Over 2 months ago now.
Real quick, I want to give a shout out to a few of the premium subscribers here. REM Properties, I see you in the chat. Lomansky, Barbara, Clark, Mitchell Baker is here as well. Let's see, Terry Reed, thank you for being a premium subscriber. Michael Takahashi, Kelly Emerson, you guys are all awesome. Very much appreciate your support here on the channel. Jay brings up Lucy Olson maybe looking a little different now than she was earlier in the year. I haven't noticed that. Kyle, you're in person with these ladies a lot throughout the season. Do you notice anything different physically that Lucy's maybe gained some muscle mass throughout the year?
I can't say that's not something that I pick up on immediately when seeing someone like, I mean, that could very well be possible. I think the thing with Lucy is just more of the confidence thing and the way that she's playing. I mean, I don't know that there's anything different with her game that would say, like, watching her play, there's nothing that I would say like, oh, physicality wise, she's done better that way. I don't know. I mean, there's certain, if she has, gained some extra muscle, that could help with Big Ten physicality, I guess. But I haven't noticed anything specific about her that would lead someone to. I just haven't noticed that. But another thing I was going to bring up here, Torvik already has the game up for tomorrow. They've got Iowa 73-72. So yeah,
I have. Listen, I'm sure I'm not the only one that said this, but when the bracket came out, Kyle, you know that I said this. I loved this draw, and I stand by that. I think this team will make it to Friday. You got to count the days. The fact that they have to win 5 in 5 days, in spite of how hot they were at the end of the year, shows the depth in this conference and how difficult it is to get buys. But Steve wants to know about seeding. We did have this conversation Sunday. And Kyle, I've got like one other call for you. And then if there's anything else you want to add before, we'll let you slide and get your post-game coverage over at Hawkeye Report. But you made the comment on Sunday you think this locks them into a 6 seed. They could lose by 30 against Michigan State tomorrow night, and they're probably a 6 seed. Is that fair?
No, I said I thought this would put them in a spot where if they lost to Michigan State, they would be right on the edge. I thought this was one that if they lost tonight, they were for sure a 7 in my eyes. I think this one puts them where if you lose tomorrow and you get a 7 seed, you can't complain about it. If you get a 6 seed, other teams cannot complain about it because I think it's that. I haven't looked over the last couple of days to compare resumes again. That'll be something that I do after this tournament is done. just because obviously they think it's going to change again in 24 hours what Iowa's resume looks like. But I do certainly believe if they win tomorrow, they will be a 6th seed. And then, like I said, I don't think Iowa can get up to a 5 seed without doing something pretty special at this tournament. But like I said, I do believe tomorrow a win would lock them into the 6th seed. And I think the comment that I made the other day was that if they lost to Michigan State, it would be one of those where, what happens to an Oklahoma State who's projected a 7 seed? What happens to Michigan? Iowa did just beat Michigan, but if Michigan goes and beats Washington tomorrow and then goes and beats Maryland, Michigan would have their own argument to get back up to a 6th seed. Utah's at a 7 seed right now. What do they do in the Big 12 tournament? So I think if Iowa loses tomorrow, it comes down to what are those teams that are projected on the 7 line? What do they do? And what do the other 6 seeds do? Does another 6 seed falter more than Iowa did? So I think that's what it would be tomorrow is if Iowa loses, it'd be kind of what happens around Iowa. But if Iowa wins tomorrow, I think they're locked in as a 6 seed then.
All right, we got one more caller before we let Huseman leave and finish his post-game coverage. We've got Darrell MVP, huge college basketball fan. Darrell, appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem. Feels an honor just to be here. I feel like I'm on the Avengers panel of Iowa women's basketball.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So,
you're on the Avengers panel. Welcome.
Yeah, I know. Great to be on here. So I was just going to extrapolate that a little bit further. I think there's a massive difference this year in between a 6 and 7 seed because it feels like there's about 8 or 10 teams that have separated themselves this year in women's basketball, where if Iowa is a 6 seed, I believe they can make the Sweet 16 because there's plenty of 3 seeds like Kentucky is an example that I think is somewhat fraudulent this year, or Oklahoma. I think Iowa can beat those type of teams. Whereas if they have to play a South Carolina or a UConn potentially, that's a tough world to ask. That's a tough ask. So do you agree with that assessment that there's a massive gap between a 6 and a 7 this year?
Oh yeah, I think I've been saying that for a while, haven't I? That I think that the difference between getting off of that, because we've been talking about it since Iowa was projected like a 10 seed, that I said if there was any type of path to get to a 6 seed, there's a huge difference. And I think there's still, very tough teams at a 3 seed. But you look at the projected 2 seeds right now, like NC State, LSU, Notre Dame, UConn. Can Iowa beat one of those teams? And something I haven't brought up yet. I went into the Torvik site today. You can go through and mess with the calendar and put in. It'll rate the teams based on whatever calendar timing that you want to put in. I put Iowa in their coming into today, 8 of their last 10 that they had won. Starting with that Washington game, Torvik had Iowa rated as the 10th best team in the country since that time. So Torvik believes Iowa's playing as well as anyone in the country. But to me, there's still a huge difference between the way Iowa's playing right now and what they would have to play as well as they've played during this entire stretch against an NC State or an LSU or a UConn or a Notre Dame to pull on the road to do that. Now, you look at the threes, and I don't think Oklahoma was a fraudulent team. I don't think Kentucky is either. But I do think there's a large difference between a Kentucky in Lexington than there is at playing at NC State or at LSU. TCU is someone who's obviously won the Big 12. Haley Van List's a great player. Sedona Prince is a great player. But the difference between a TCU and playing like a Notre Dame or a UConn, Duke's another projected 3 seed right now. I just think there's a pretty big difference. North Carolina is another team that I would throw in there. They're a 4 seed projected right now, could get up to a 3. I just think there's a big enough difference. Not to say that I would favor Iowa in any of those matchups on the road, but I think there's a big enough difference that there is plenty of reason to want a 6 seed over a 7 seed. And credit to Iowa for being able to even be in this discussion because, with the way the bubble shook out, I don't think Iowa was actually ever going to be in crazy danger of missing the tournament. Washington got the 13 seed, and I think they still might get in. But for them to go from being on the bubble to all the way up to where they are now has been pretty impressive to watch. But yeah, for them, if they can get this win tomorrow against Michigan State and lock themselves into a 6 seed, I do think that raises their chances of making a Sweet 16 appearance a lot.
Yeah, fraudulently was probably a bit too strong of a term, but I was going to
wait. Sorry, I just want to go off the subject. I am a little more bullish on this team than I think Kyle H is as it relates to this tournament. I understand the project, the ask is large to expect them to win 5 games in 5 days, but I don't think it's that. I'm not saying you think it's far-fetched, Kyle, but I really do think this team can win these next 2 games and get to the finals. I think it'll be hard, but we saw the Iowa men here a couple of years ago win 4 games in 4 days. And having a first round like this, Kyle, where you don't have to play your starters in the fourth, well, you really don't have to play your starters in the fourth quarter, that helps. And I don't know. I think UCLA is a little overrated if you can somehow neutral, and it's hard to do it. But we saw Iowa compete and hold them down offensively. If you can somehow figure out a way to either deny Lauren Betts the ball in some way, shape, or form, or just make it difficult on her, create turnovers, etc. She's obviously incredibly skilled with her feet and with her ability to know where she's at under the rim and her touch off the glass, etc. But Darrell, I think this team can to make it to Sunday. And then as it relates to the big picture, I saw somebody in the chat bring up, a Kentucky guard. That's Georgia Moore, who followed her coach to Kentucky, right?
Yeah, Kenny Brooks.
That the Virginia Tech coach.
Yeah, Kenny Brooks.
And she, of course, Georgia, one of the most valuable portal ads this past off season. But Lucy, S. Steele brings up how Lucy has to be the most valuable addition other than Georgia. Would you agree with that, Kyle? And Drill, I'm curious to get your take on that as well.
Oh, most value. I mean, Haley Van Lith would be on there as well.
That's true.
If you're talking about guards, that would probably be your 3. Would be Haley and Georgia and Lucy Olson. Without going back through the portal editions, I mean, those would be up there. I'm assuming there's probably another or 2 that would be in the conversation for being on that list. But yeah, I mean Georgia Amore, and along with other transfer additions that they brought in, and Clara Strack came from Virginia Tech as well and is having a crazy season. So Kentucky added several transfers to kind of help their way, and Georgia was on there. But I think Haley Van Lith and Lucy and what they've done kind of individually for each of their teams would be, the reason why kind of where they are where they are right now. To your point about the Big Ten tournament, I guess a lot of our discussions about the Big Ten tournament, I've been going on a side of more like NCAA tournament. What do they have to do for certain seeding? So, I'm sitting here saying, I don't know that they can get to a 5 seed without making it, maybe to Sunday. So my whole thought process has been, unless you're going to make it Sunday, you beat Michigan State, it doesn't really matter. Like I certainly think Iowa can beat Michigan State, and we've seen Iowa almost beat Ohio State. We've seen them almost beat UCLA. But after they beat Michigan State, to me, unless you're going to go win the whole tournament, they would love to 4-peat. That being the first team in Big Ten history to 4-peat would be incredible. But on my side of it, where we've been so NCAA tournament centric with our talks for so long, to me, after they beat Michigan State tomorrow, they don't need to do anything else. If they lose that next game to Ohio State, it doesn't matter, because you've already kind of, to me, gotten the goal accomplished, which was get out of that 7-10 region. And anything on top of beating Michigan State tomorrow is, just extra momentum for getting to the NCAA tournament.
Drill, your thoughts on the Georgia Moore and Haley Van Lith, Lucy Olson conversation? And for the record, Lucy Olson was one of the top players in the portal, perceived to be one of the, it's not like that's a surprise, but I will say at one point this season, I think we can all agree, we weren't sure if the fit, she started off what you'd expect her, if she was struggling though from the field first half of conference play, like a lot of people were. There's a reason this team had lost 5 straight. So it's been steady growth from Lucy. I think hers was sort of almost immediate. She just kind of turned it on. It felt like Sydney's has been more, obviously 3-point shooting. She's been unbelievable since mid-January. But, and by the way, but I'll come back to you, Drill. But Kyle, I just want to go back to that number one more time. I can't get this. I can't get over this. I'm assuming you wrote about this on your website, just about the 3-point shooting, because it's become so extensive now. This is not a 1, 2, 3 week thing. We're going on 2 months of this for someone who doesn't have a real orthodox shooting stroke. And you brought up how she's not somebody who's going to take a lot of contested threes, but neither is Taylor McCabe. It's amazing. There can't be anybody. I would almost guarantee there's nobody in this conference that if you go back to January 19th, who shot more than, 15 threes, there's nobody in this conference that is shooting 65% from 3.
I would assume no. I don't even know if I can search that. The Torvik website would be the best chance here. You want me to go from the beginning of the winning streak?
want you to go from I want you to go from January 19th. It was actually the loss against Oregon. She was 1 of 1 against Oregon, 1 of 1 against Washington.
Okay.
So basically 1 game prior to the start of the win streak. While he's doing that, Drill, any thoughts on the transfer conversation?
Yeah, it's been a while since going back to the transfer conversation, since players transfer all around. I know Stanford got picked over, so I think a few of their players would probably be on the list with the retirement of De Beers. Oregon State's best player, Reagan Beers, also transferred from Oregon State to Oklahoma. Oklahoma is as a 3 seed now, one of the best teams in the SEC. So I think she should be added to the list. But she's, a power forward/center player. But I agree. I think Haley Van Lith, I would say, is the best transfer player this year. She's done way more for TCU. They won the Big 12 regular season for the first time I saw in their program's history. They're the 1 seed. They'll probably win the Big 12. So I believe she's the best overall player. But Lucy's a great addition. I'm not going to say, it's a bunch of riches you've got. So I'm not going to say it's, Haley Van Lith versus her, therefore she's way worse. No. These are all great players. That's just my thoughts, though.
I found it.
Oh, good.
This bless the Torvik site that you can find everything on here. So I went from January 18th, which would be the day before. Who was Oregon the 19th?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
So I went from January 18th, and then I put in players that have made at least 15 threes since January 18th. And Sita Fulcher has made 22. She is first. 64.7% on 22 of 34 made threes. Second place is a girl from Lafayette in the Patriot League, is 17 of 29, which is 58.6%. So since January 18th, Sita Fulcher, on people that have made 15 or more threes, is shooting 6% better than anybody else. There is someone, Allie Turner from Gonzaga, is 39 of 74. Since January 18th, which is 52.7%, which is pretty impressive to have 17 more made threes instead of that percentage. But the further you go down, there are a couple people in the 30s for made threes that are right around 50%. But yes, on 15 or more made threes, Sita Fulcher is shooting 6% better than anybody else.
Wouldn't you say with that many shots, basically the entire offense is probably running through that player?
No, because I would say the offense is going through Lucy Olson, but I mean,
no, I was talking about for on the Gonzaga.
Oh yeah. It could be, but I mean, it might also be like a higher level, like a Taylor McCabe, like that type of 3-point shooter that is going to get more looks in a game. Like yeah. I mean, it could be. It wouldn't necessarily be a point guard, but it could be like a shooting guard, like that gets a lot of 3-point attempts. I upped the total to more than 20 made threes, and people that have made more than 23 since January 18th. Sita Fulcher is in first, 12% higher than anyone else. That person in second place is Allie Turner from Gonzaga with 39 made threes. So yeah, she's shooting it better than anybody in the country by a pretty sizable amount right now.
Cory, I know you're muted, Cory.
Sorry about that. Go ahead. Anything else, Daryl, before I let you go?
I was just
I'm trying to do 3 things here. I'm tweeting these stats as we're talking about them.
Well, you're fine. The whole chat was just saying, Cory, you are muted. Cory, you are muted. So I felt obligated to be the voice of the people. But do you think it's even possible, because you seem a little bit more dead set in the Iowa's a 6 seed? Do you think there's any chance at all Iowa can be a 4 seed? Because the top 4 seeds in women's basketball host, and that's a massive advantage. Do you think they have to win the Big Ten tournament in order for them to host?
I don't even think they host if they win the whole Big Ten tournament, just because they have 9 losses. I don't think they would make their case, because I believe tomorrow would be a quad 1 win, so they'd get 4 quad 1 wins on the way to win the Big Ten tournament. But I still don't know that would be enough. Because Tennessee is 21-8 right now, and they're on the bubble for hosting. And they're talking about trying to get a win in the SEC, another big win in the SEC tournament to host. So I don't think Iowa would get there, even if they won the whole tournament. I think you'd come up one game winning shot short. Oregon won, Nebraska won, Michigan State won. If one of those goes, maybe you have a chance at what it'd be 26-8 then. But at 25-9, I just feel like they'd come up just short of it at that point.
I got you. And how much of this result do you think is a combination of how good Iowa's been? And they passed the eye test. They're clearly a good team. But Wisconsin's not that good of a team. They're under 500. They've been sputtering all year. How much of this result do you think it's for Iowa being great versus Wisconsin not being good?
I would say Iowa. I mean, I thought Iowa played really well tonight, and I still go back to Wisconsin probably played about as well as they could have hoped for on Sunday. Outside of maybe a thing or two, maybe they wanted Lily Cron to make another 3 or 2 at that point. But I mean, Wisconsin played for the majority of that game about as well as they could have hoped for. And I said this at the beginning when I got on here. Wisconsin wasn't going to all of a sudden find some elite defense over the span of 3 days. They're just not a good defensive team. So they were going to have to shoot out of their minds to stay in this game unless they found some sort of defensive adjustment. And I thought Iowa was going to be able to make some adjustments to make this game a little bit better for them. So I thought Iowa played really well tonight. I think if they play a third time, Wisconsin probably makes a couple more shots, and you find a more happy medium where Iowa wins by 22 or something. But I mean, yeah, Wisconsin's a little bit better than I think their record suggests. But I mean, I thought it was a mix of Wisconsin's, a bottom tier team in the Big Ten, and I thought Iowa played really well tonight.
I got you. And I guess the final question before Cory kicks me out of here is where are you?
Drill, you can come back. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'm here.
Go ahead. You were cutting out there. I thought I could
sorry. I was say, where are you in the rest versus rest debate?
What debate?
I would say that with a week off, and 5 games in 5 days would be a lot of playing. With a week off, it depends on the team. I think even the last 2 years, the team has talked about saying that they did feel a little rusty, but again, you're playing a 15 seed and a 16 seed in those games. But I do think it kind of depends on the team. Some teams might be able to take the rest and get right back into it. So I think that'll be an interesting thing to see how that affects Iowa. But I mean, I think you're not super worried about how many games you play this week just because you do have the full week break. If you were about to play next week in the NCAA tournament, I don't think you'd really want to go that hard at trying to go for 5 wins in 5 days because that would be tough to recover from going to the NCAA tournament. But a whole week off, I think you should be okay.
Well, thanks for having me on, and I'm looking forward to an Iowa victory tomorrow because I believe they will beat Michigan State. Thanks,
Drew and Leapy. Appreciate you stopping by. All right. Kyle Huseman, HawkeyeReport.com. People can follow his stuff over at Hawkeye Report, part of the On3 network, and also check out his baseball coverage. He's double dipping this week, as he is throughout spring. The longer the women's basketball season goes, the more work on Kyle's hands, but the bigger the spring bonus that Tom Kakert has to give him. So definitely check out his stuff, HawkeyeReport.com, and at Huseman Kyle with 2 N's over on X. Kyle, appreciate you being here. We'll talk to you tomorrow night after, I think it's going to be a win over Michigan State.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, sir. All right, folks. Yeah, tomorrow night, Iowa, Michigan State doubleheader. Kyle, did you have anything else to add before we kind of function? We'll move, sort of transition into the big game tomorrow night, and we'll say goodbye to everybody. We'll kind of shorten it a little bit tonight without Cash and with a quick turnaround for ourselves as well.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple little things just because I was screwing around on Bart Torvik as well while he's talking about it. Couple things. Number one, since that January 22nd date that we're kind of bringing up in that range, USC is the only Big Ten team with a better record than Iowa, and obviously Iowa beat USC. But Bart Torvik has Iowa as the number 8 offense in the country and the number 19 defense in the country since that date. And their defense, so if you go back to their last 3 NCAA tournament runs and the 4 years that they have on record at Bart Torvik, the Iowa defense in the last month and a half here has been about 5 points a game better than it has been over that stretch. So because they haven't had a defense ranked, I think last year they were like 43rd or 44th, but that was the highest defense that they'd ever had over that NCAA tournament run where they had what was it? It was the 2 championship games they lost in the second round and then the Sweet 16. So defense is significantly better. I mean, I don't ever remember looking men's or women's in any analytical site and seeing a top 20 defense for Iowa. They're the 5th ranked 3-point shooting team in that span as well. They're shooting 41.5%. So, and like Kyle said, they have them as the 10th ranked team. And if you actually eliminate, so Bart Torvik allows you to take the rankings and eliminate all results against quad 3 and quad 4 opponents. So you kind of throw out the trashy games. And if you do that, if you just go quad 2 and above, Iowa ranks as the 4th team in the country. So very, very, very good metrics. I mean, they're, and the eye test proves it. Durrell MVP was right. I mean, they've looked every part of it, but they're absolutely a top 10 team in the country right now, top 10, 15 team in the country last month and a bit.
See, what I would argue, the one qualm I would have with Jan Jensen and what she said at the end of that 5-game losing streak was she kept saying, well, we're close. And me as an outsider, I'm looking at the team thinking they don't look close. They didn't look close to me. Like, they were losing close games. They lost that Oregon game by 1, but they didn't look the part. They did not look the part. They were playing teams close because they were defensively, they were pretty good. Their offense has come on, though, here of late. Frankly, they really didn't. The Washington game, they shot lights out. I didn't think Northwestern was all that impressive. But as this season has grown old, they've gotten better and better on offense. Their shooting numbers have gone up. Falter shooting better. Olsen shooting better. We're starting to see Guyton these last couple of games hit a couple of threes, which is good because she went cold for a stretch. We even saw Tegan Mulaney bank one in tonight. And again, how much of an X factor would that be? Is if you could get someone like Mulaney off the bench that knocks in a 3 or 2 in a game, that's a huge difference for someone who's going to have to play some because they don't have any other 4s to spell Sydney Falter some time. Yeah. So that's big. Taylor Strimlow, she was not good tonight, but she's always scrappy, and she's not going to give you a great threat from outside, but she crashes the glass, goes after loose balls. We saw Ava Hayden come in and give them good minutes. She was not really a factor for a long stretch of time because they just didn't have minutes to go around. So this is just a fun thing, and certainly Michigan State's a big challenge. That was a frustrating loss here a couple months ago. And we are going to have live post-game coverage after Iowa and Michigan State tomorrow night. Expect Michigan State to turn Iowa over. I would expect any opportunities they have to press and force Iowa to pass the ball more than they want to, because they didn't pass the ball at all. It didn't feel like they passed the ball at all tonight. I mean, it just they did. There was a lot of quicker. Maybe I'm comparing this to the 30 games prior, but they were, you said, they were letting it fly. It's not like they were running the clock down very much, and sharing the ball, but it's not like they were draining a lot of clock. And they didn't get out and transition a ton. I look at their numbers, their fast break numbers. They had 12 fast break points, so it's not like that was a huge big facet of this. But boy, you shoot the ball 57%, you're going to win a lot of games. 55% from 3. Didn't make a free throw. They were 0 for 1 from the line. That's another weird stat. 0 for 1 from the line. They shot 0%.
81 points with no free throws is crazy.
They shot 0% from the foul line, Kyle.
Yeah.
He shot 0%. Anyways, let's run through the stat lines here. Hannah Stolke with 8 on 4 of 5 shooting. Taylor McCabe with 9 on 3 of 5 from 3 shooting. Sydney Falter with 9, 1 of 1 from 3, 4 of 4 from the field. Kylie Feuerbach, 9 points, 6 assists, 3 steals. She was 4 of 6 from the field. Lucy Olsen was an efficient 8 of 12, 3 of 4 from 3. Only took 12 shots, 19 points, 3 assists. Aaliyah Guyton made a pair of 3s. She was perfect from outside. Addie O'Grady gave them 4 points. Not as efficient. She was 2 of 6 from the field. Tegan Mulaney was 2 of 7. How she got up 7 shots in 14 minutes is beyond me, but
yeah.
Anyways,
and one other thing to interject there, Cory. I was just looking, one last thing from Bart Torvik. That initial period of the season to January 22nd, one of the big changes from then to now is the turnovers that we've lamented. They ranked 150th in the country in turnover percentage to that point, and from that point on, they've ranked 91st in the country. So they're 50 spots up in terms of taking care of the ball too. So they've done that a lot better as well. I know it's still not. It's not great, but Bart Torvik, they highlight they color code everything based on strength, weakness, and it doesn't even. I mean, it ranked as a glaring weakness, but to that point in the season, and now it doesn't even register. It registers as a middle of the pack number. So
they also got 6 out of AJ Edgar late. Ava Hayden gave him 6. Got minutes from Callie Levine, Jada Gyamfi. I know certain people have been frustrated that Callie hasn't been playing. They were struggling. They struggled when their second unit went in there. But when you build a 30-point lead, who cares? I'm not an advocate for playing. I don't care if you get it within 15. I'm not unless you're still 12 minutes. I think once you get inside the 10-minute mark, the fourth quarter, if you're up by 25, I'd be taking all your starters out, because if your backups are that bad that they can't protect a 25-point lead in 10 minutes, then they shouldn't be on scholarship. So, hey, great opportunity in tournament play to get some rest for the experienced vets. The Hawkeyes outscoring the Badgers 42-18 in the paint, and that's a big stat because Wisconsin is really good inside. We saw Carter McRae really give them fits on Sunday. She was quiet tonight, 6 points. Sarah Williams was really good with 22 and 5, but again, it was not enough, and the Hawkeyes holding the Badgers to 38% from the field. They were decent from 3, 46%, but again, couldn't get offensive rebounds. They shot the ball horribly, only got 5 offensive rebounds compared to 11 for Iowa, who, this is a team in Iowa that shot the ball really well. So, there's not much to be frustrated with. I'm sure if you're looking at individuals, Addie O'Grady wants to play better, and Taylor Strimler wants to play better. But that's about all I can look at and find. And we'll see what happens tomorrow night. Kyle, we appreciate you being here and filling in for Kashin. You're not going to get the compliments on your hair or your wall. Somebody said your wall is too plain. Let's be careful what we say, because Kyle is a married man. If you start talking about his decor, you're talking about his bride's decor. So let's be careful.
Talking about the people that we rent from's decor. That's what you're talking about. So I'm not complaining.
Well, I don't know why you don't have a big FTHO.
Well, send me one. I'll put it up.
We'll put it up. All right.
We'll make my wall Hawkeye of the Storm Tornadoes.
That's right. Just paint it, spray paint it on the wall. I'm sure the next landlord would love it. Free advertising for me. So
exactly.
All right, folks. For Kyle Spence and his great platform, Kyle Spence Golf, I'm Cory Brada here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Is this platform? Be sure you donate, hit the like button, subscribe, follow, all of that great stuff, and we'll be back with Kashin Alexander tomorrow night following the Hawkeyes and the Spartans.